Oh, bury me down in the lone prairie. Let the old coyotes howl on me.
Sorry, little Bugs Bunny prelude.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere. They're playing games at the edges of what we know. Monster Lore Tour Podcast. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Side Trail 56 of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the guy that can turn his head almost completely around, Mr. Maz. How we doing, Maz?
No complaints. I'm the guardian. I'm the walrus. Cuckoo-cajube. Yeah.
Yeah. Maz is dead.
It's this little Sergeant Peppery thing.
Or did he ever even exist to begin with is the real question.
He's everywhere. It's just like,
The
Obi-Wan.
ubiquitous Maz.
If you kill me, you only make me stronger.
And believe me, I've tried.
Yeah.
It's a good beer. So today, we're doing something a little bit different with the side trails. Beginning of season 2 here, because Maz has just begun a 4-part series for Owl Week.
40. I didn't tell you.
40?
You got to carry the one. Yeah.
That's going to save me a lot of work this year. But for these first 4 episodes of season 2, I'm going to supplement his side trails for him to bring some monstrous variety to the mix. So beginning today, we actually have a true story in 4 parts that will present as a collection in the Side Trail compilation that will follow Owl Week. So for the people listening in the Patreon area, you can hear this one part at a time as the episodes come out, and otherwise they will come out as a full compilation, so kind of an episode.
Yeah.
I'm doing it. It's almost my first episode of the season is the Side Trails for Owl Week.
Right.
But it doesn't really fit our typical mold, so it's a perfect place for me to do this story, because it wouldn't really fit in our standard format so much.
We have a mold?
Well, we have a format.
Oh, okay.
With our segments and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This one wouldn't really fit exactly into that, so I'm glad I got this opportunity to do the side trail so I can kind of freewheel it a little bit and bring you something a little bit different for the Monster Lore Tour that we'll present as a full episode at, following Owl Week.
Yeah.
Any hoot.
Yeah.
Uh-uh.
It's Owl Week.
I see what you did there.
Yep.
Any hoot. This one does come with a bit of a PSA. We're going to be talking about people dying a lot. The title of this side trail is Death in the Desert, after all. And through this whole saga, times it's going to get kind of nasty. So just be prepared for some horrible things to be put in your ear holes if you listen to this. But that's why most people are here, I guess. It's a monster podcast. But the really real life stuff, to me, is a little harder to listen to.
But also the owl death, omen is, very pertinent for this. So.
Yep, absolutely. But for those who aren't in the mood for such things at the moment, no offense taken, step away for now and come back when you're in the mood for some death and destruction and whatnot.
Get back to the Care Bear podcast. You damn hippies.
I bet there is one, too. Because there's a podcast for everything. It's kind of cool.
I'm Stormcloud Care Bear, I've been told.
Ooh.
I am. We had a Care Bear group, and I was designated Stormcloud, which is the Thunder Shaman, so I'm cool with that.
Okay. Yep. That's cool.
It's actually the only Care Bear I know, because that's what I was designated.
Yeah, I was trying to think if I ever had a Care Bear designation. I don't think I ever did.
It's the only one I know, because that's what I am.
But so today I start a true tale, and this is a tale of
2 cities.
Man versus nature, man versus himself. Blurs the boundaries of morality a little bit as we go.
As we do.
But before we get into the story true, we need to
sail into the ocean blue.
Give ourselves a little background on the deadliness of the Great American Desert. where our story will take place. This is the region generally known as the American Southwest that consists of a number of deserts that all kind of run one into the next.
They're all pretty much the same desert, except each other different desert has like a different accent color to distinguish it, so it kind of pops. So some of the cactuses pop.
Right, different fauna, different flora.
Yeah.
Things like that.
We try to accessorize here in the desert.
Yeah, and a little bit different color to the landscape and whatnot as well. But here's what I'm supposed to read. AmericanSouthwest.net describes it thusly. There are 4 true deserts in the U.S. Great Basin, Mojave, Sonoran, and Chihuahuan, all conforming to the basic definition of a desert as being a place of very low rainfall and restricted plant life. Of these, the former is a predominantly cold desert, receiving much snow in winter, and many parts are not much different in appearance to some of the adjoining lands. The other 3 are hot for most of the year and more closely resemble a desert of popular imagination, containing large areas with very little plant life, just sand and barren rocks or sparse grassland often mixed with many types of cactus. Outside these 4 large areas are other regions sometimes considered to be a desert but receiving too much rainfall to match the strict definition. And these include the Colorado Plateau of northern Arizona, where we sit at the moment, and South Utah. Additionally, there are several places named as a desert that again do not strictly qualify, such as the Red Desert of southwest Wyoming, the Painted Desert of Arizona, right down the road, or the Escalante and San Rafael deserts of South Utah, while other named deserts fall within the larger regions, for example Black Rock Desert in the Great Basin, or Lechuguilla Desert in the Sonoran. If you look at the map, you'll see these deserts all kind of run one into the next, with only sometimes a stretch of high ground running between them. Flagstaff, where we keep our headquarters, where we're recording right now, is one of those places. It's one of the major oases and lies pretty much right in the middle of all those deserts. I think that's why Flagstaff has such an energy to it, honestly. Yeah. We'll get into that in future episodes. But we are not here to speak of the restful oases. We are here to speak of the monstrousness of the desert and the damage it can inflict on the uninitiated. We begin in the Chihuahuan Desert.
And that is like southeastern.
This is Texas, New Mexico. Down into Mexico. Yep. The Chihuahuan Desert is one of the most biodiverse arid regions in the world, and it is cut off from neighboring arid regions by the Sierra Madre Occidental Mountains to the west and the Sierra Madre Oriental Mountains to the east. This geographic isolation has made it home to a number of species of both flora and fauna that exist only there. It's kind of surprising how biodiverse a desert can be for people who don't, haven't looked into this yet. The following is from the National Park Service website. The Chihuahuan Desert boasts as many as 3,500 plant species, including nearly a quarter of the world's cactus species. Approximately 1,000 of the plant species grow only in this ecoregion. Some distinctive habitat types in the Chihuahuan Desert include yucca woodlands, playas, gypsum dunes, and a diverse array of freshwater habitats. Vast desert grasslands and a wide variety of yuccas and agaves, including many endemic species, also make this desert extremely unique. The Chihuahuan Desert is home to more than 170 species of amphibians and reptiles. At least 18 of these species are endemic to the ecoregion. A surprisingly large number of endemic fish occur in the Chihuahuan Desert as well. Nearly half of the 110 fish species in the region are either endemic or of limited distribution. Fish in the desert that only live in the desert. Isn't that wild?
Well, what about the reptilian? I mean, are they including in the reptilian side of the reptoids and the chuds, and are they counting all those? I mean, there's a lot that aren't even captured.
Well, they did say amphibians and reptiles, so yeah, I guess I would assume so.
We'll just count them.
Continuing. Most are relic species found in isolated springs in the closed basins. The Chihuahuan Desert supports a large number of wide-ranging mammals, more than 130 species, such as mule deer, pronghorn, jaguar, javelina, and gray fox. It harbors North America's largest remaining black-tailed prairie dog complex on the continent, and the only populations of the endemic Mexican prairie dog. Historically, the Chihuahuan Desert was one of the few ecoregions where grizzly bears, wolves, and jaguars could be found at the same locality. Several sites still remain a complement of larger vertebrates, including mountain lions, jaguars, and golden eagles. Can you imagine being in the desert and running into a grizzly bear?
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
Yeah, like this is like two sets of problems that aren't ever supposed to come together.
Match
You know
together.
what I mean? And just a side note, as I mentioned there real quick, relic fish are species that are super old and don't exist anywhere else anymore. So you got basically some Jurassic fish swimming around in the water holes out in the Chihuahua there, Moth.
And the jaguars are definitely here, and they're moving further north because they have been seen in Phoenix in the last couple of years.
As it gets hotter, they'll move more north. Yep.
BMW sightings as well.
All right. Well, the thing is, even though the area only gets between 6 and 20 inches of rain in a year, with most of it falling in the summer, there are ample water caches scattered throughout the region, even in the harshest regions, such as the northern Chihuahuan and what is now New Mexico, in the area of White Sands National Monument in the world-famous Carlsbad Caverns.
That's where the world-famous Them was filmed, was in White Sands, New Mexico.
There you go. It's wild, dude. Literally just white sand. It looks like, I don't know, it's sand dunes, but it's white.
Yes.
Like it looks like salt.
Yep.
It's wild.
Wild sands.
The water here collects in natural formations of its own design, carved in sandstone rock outcroppings by the downpours and resulting floods of chubascos. Chubascos are the localized violent summer thunderstorms usually referred to mistakenly as monsoons. Everyone calls them monsoons. Not accurate. That occur throughout the deserts of the American Southwest.
Because we're in the wrong hemisphere for the monsoons, is that?
Yeah, monsoons are Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
It's a little piece of Arizona trivia here, actually, Mouse. Our summer afternoon storms aren't monsoons.
Chubascos.
The term was brought home by veterans of the Korean and Vietnam Wars, actually. These storms reminded them of the actual monsoons they witnessed in Asia, like where the heavy rains would come through every afternoon. But those storms are actually much larger and longer lasting than our little isolated downpours in the desert. So not monsoons here, chubascos. Mm-hmm. It's like Tabasco, but right. Chew at the beginning, so chubasco.
Yep.
Okay? But I digress. I speak of hiding water. Water fills its self-designed pools. Water lines the walls of narrow canyons and fills the saddles between boulders. Water finds the potholes in the shady spots. It finds the cracks through which it can seep out of reach of the sun. Anywhere the water can rest, it will do so, and so it collects. Some places in surprisingly large amounts, and others scarcely little. But the diversity of life here speaks to not only the existence, but actual abundance of water to be had in the most arid of places. The trick is finding it. You see, for all this water, this stretch of the northern Chihuahuan Desert is known as one of the deadliest places in the world, along with many isolated regions of the Great American Desert. For one must be savvy with the ways of water in the desert and know how to seek it out in order to survive a trek across these lands.
If I could, I would say, having been in all those deserts, the Great Basin seems to be this biggest, emptiest. There's nothing. Nothing in that region of Utah, Nevada.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Oh, boy.
Yeah, there's really nothing.
Nope.
The Chihuahuan has some places, though.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not arguing that
they
all
really
desolate.
all do.
Yeah.
If you end up in the wrong spot, you know.
Yeah. I mean, just try to drive from here to Los Angeles is a lot of nothing.
Yeah. But here is an excerpt from Craig Child's book, The Secret Knowledge of Water, talking of the stretch of Sonoran Desert, known as the Cabeza Prieta Wilderness, right smack in the middle of nowhere along the Arizona and Mexico border, one of those places we're talking about, a place similarly remote and barren to the northern Chihuahuan. Humans are absent here because they die. One document records the death of 400 people here by 1900, many of whom were traveling from Mexico to the California gold fields. More have died since. Within view of several distant mountains, the family had been memorialized by black pieces of basalt arranged to form the numeral 8, telling how many family members perished.
I would have seen it as the symbol of infinity, but I would have totally been wrong.
Yep. You would have been. Any hoot. 65 graves surround one of the better-known watering sites, presumably from the times that the holes went dry. Most victims died of dehydration and exposure, but occasional reports concern those who drowned, too weak from thirst to climb out from the deep stone water holes into which they had plunged. There are more recent deaths, those of illegal immigrants from Mexico who come seeking jobs, picking watermelons, or cleaning houses. These people walk out in small groups, some of them from the tropics, never having seen the desert. They hire a person, a coyote, who deposits them across the border and points the way to Interstate 8. Each carries a gallon plastic milk jug filled with water, which in the summer lasts a few hours. The walk takes many days, and they live maybe until the afternoon of the second or third day. Their tracks of discarded belongings and empty milk jugs signaling insanity. Some of their milk jugs are, in fact, found half full, beside their bodies, skin taut to bursting. This story repeats itself every year. Dark shit. Something to notice there is how he said the family of 8 died within sight of some mountains. That wasn't a frivolous detail, for it is in the mountains, where there is rock in which the water can form its own caches, that you will find the water in these deserts. If they had steered to those mountains to begin with, they may have survived the trek.
Gotcha.
That's one of the keys of survival out there, man. You gotta go to the rock. Not the sand just sucks in the water. The rock will hold the caches.
Gotcha.
And there are those who enter these deserts with the know-how to not only survive, but come out on the other side in just as good a shape as they went in. Take the Jesuit priest known as Kino, that's Kino, who spent a good part of his life traveling back and forth across this same stretch of desert. He began his explorations in 1683. This is old school, and created a map of all the tinajas he found. Tinajas is the name given to the carved pots of water in the rock formations.
Right.
It actually means like pot, jug, you know.
It's the tidal pools. We find squid and
You find shrimp in these.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah. Shrimp will
Desert shrimp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like tiny little like translucent
Tiny
shrimp things.
Nice. They're sea monkeys. I had them as a child.
Yeah. They are. They're sea monkeys. They actually wildly live in these tinajas.
Yeah. They're an invasive species. Kill them when you find them.
But as I was saying, so Kino created a map of all the tinajas he found in the mountains and rocky outcroppings. He then spent years leading expeditions back and forth across the area. Here is another excerpt from Craig Child's The Secret Knowledge of Water. This is a longer one. You want to read this one for me, Moz, please?
Sure. During his 24-year residence in the desert, Kino made more than 50 journeys, what he called entradas, each varying between 100 and 1,000 miles. Although he was a markedly skilled cartographer, technology was not yet available for the field recording of longitudes, so his maps do not pinpoint his route exactly, and there is debate as to where certain tinajas lie. His travel through Cabeza Prieta were done east to west, and then west to east, setting a line roughly corresponding to what is now called El Camino del Diablo, the Road of the Devil. The line follows the waterholes. ... Of all the people who have died here, none were under Kino's watch. None of his people wandered off lost in search of water, never to return, a record that was due partly to the knowledge of Native Americans who joined his travels, and partly to Kino's refined sense of landscape. There were apparently times when neither Kino nor his companions knew where the next water would lie, and they relied on each other to find it. Kino watched closely. He recorded each detail. I imagine those who now die here are intent on getting across rather than intent on finding water. The only way to get across is to have the sole intention of finding water. This was made apparent by Kino's constant mention of water in his notes.
Mr. Childs goes on to note that most people who die in the deserts are found in the low-lying flatlands where the water never collects. One must travel from mountain to mountain, rock outcropping to rock outcropping, in order to find the water that is desperately needed to survive. Mm-hmm. Then you have another type of desert traveler, those who are simply too tenacious to let the desert take them. Here is one more passage from Craig Childs' The Secret Knowledge of Water. 4 men traveling from Sonoita, Mexico, to their post in Yuma, Arizona, had once reported their encounters with emigrants who were struggling from a lack of water. Writing in his personal journal, one of the crew left this passage. Some men had died from thirst, and others were nearly exhausted. Among those we passed between the Colorado River and the Tinajas Altas was a party composed of 1 woman and 3 men, on foot, a pack horse in wretched condition, carrying their all. The men had given up from pure exhaustion and laid down to die. But the woman, animated by love and sympathy, had plodded on over the long road until she reached water. Then clambering up the side of the mountain to the highest Tinaja, she filled her bota, a sort of leather flask, and scarcely stopping to take rest, started back to resuscitate her dying companions. When we met them, she was striding along in advance of the men, animating them by her example. That's how you gotta do, right there, Moss.
There you go.
Back in our original setting of the Northern Chihuahuan, we have a route similar to Kino's El Camino del Diablo. This trail is known as the El Jornado del Muerto, or the Journey of the Dead. Here is the backstory as told by Jason Kirsten in his book Journey of the Dead. You want to take this one, Moss?
I don't want to go on this trip at all. It sounds terrible.
Yeah.
There's an old story people still tell their children in New Mexico. It took place in 1598 when the Spanish founders of Santa Fe were forced to cross the hostile Chihuahuan Desert. Stretching from central Mexico to just south of Albuquerque, the Chihuahuan nearly wiped out the 200 colonists by sapping away their water. They wandered through the cacti and tumbleweeds, half mad for a week, and were spared an excruciating death only by a fortuitous rain. Afterward they came to call the most brutal part of the desert El Jornado del Muerto, the Journey of the Dead.
And even for those who are fully knowledgeable of the journey ahead, traversing this infamous stretch of desert can be truly harrowing. Here is a story from the El Jornada del Muerto told on the good old Wikipedia. Because you can't do an episode without at least a little wiki in it, you know? I mean...
Yep.
On horseback, the Jornada could be traversed in as little as 2 days, as described by Bishop Tamarón traveling north on his visitation to New Mexico in 1760. Leaving the Paraje de Robledo, traveling 5 leagues. On this day, the 12th of the month, into the 6th of the journey, we came to the Jornada del Muerto. To prepare for it, a detour is made to seek the river at a place called San Diego. The night is spent there. Everything necessary is made ready. It is about half a league from the river. Barrels are brought for the purpose. These are filled with water for the people. On the morning of the 13th, the horses were taken to the river to drink. Somewhat later, all the food for the journey was prepared, and at 7:30 we left that post with considerable speed, stopping only to change horses. During this interval we ate what there was, and we traveled in this fashion until 8:30 at night when we halted opposite the Sierra of Fray Cristobal. On the 14th day of May, the 8th day of our journey, we made an early start. We reached the river at 11:30. The livestock were so thirsty that they ran to reach the water. After this fashion were the 30 leagues of this difficult stage traveled. It is further reported of this story in some places that the livestock were so thirsty that some simply dove into the water and ultimately drowned, and others drank themselves to nearly bursting. And this account was friendly enough to leave out the gruesome shape of the human travelers were in by the point they got to that water. And within this same region of desert, you have the Carlsbad Caverns National Park, just north of the Texas border in southern New Mexico. You can find one of the most remote desert areas in the U.S., if not the world, that is visited by a surprising number of people each year due to the spectacularly huge caverns that have become a world-famous landmark. If you haven't been, it is highly suggested to go. You will witness one of the most spectacular natural wonders the American Southwest has to offer, and we are home to the Grand Canyon, along with all these other, most photographed places in the world. But when you go, make sure you know, this area is deadly to humans who do not properly respect the elements into which they move.
There's 1,000 ways the desert can kill you.
Oh, yeah, man. It is a common thing for hikers and other adventurers who strike out on their own, away from guided tours or off trails, to become lost and possibly dead in the desert. For example, this story from USA Today, June 22nd, 2017. A father and son were found dead in Carlsbad Cavern National Park after a weekend of hiking in 100-degree weather. Robert Stewart Pluta, 57, and his son Robert Bobby Neil Pluta, 21, both of Corpus Christi, were reported missing by wife and mother Lillian Pluta on Monday after they failed to check out of their room at the Fairfield Inn in Carlsbad. She had attempted to contact both men several times during the weekend but never heard back, according to a news release from the New Mexico State Police. At about 4 p.m. Monday, searchers with the U.S. National Park Service found the Pluta's red Ford F-150 truck at the Rattlesnake Canyon trailhead. Early Monday evening, law enforcement and emergency crews began searching the area near the trailhead and the surrounding Chihuahuan Desert. Robert Bobby Neal, the younger Pluta, was found dead at 10:05 p.m. Monday night, about 2 miles northwest of the park's visitor center. 2 miles, dude. Robert Stewart Pluta was found dead at 10:42 a.m. Tuesday, about a mile away from his son. And then we have this story from just a few months ago, published April 13th, 2024. So recent, by KRQE News out of Albuquerque. The Eddy County Sheriff's Office is investigating after suspected human remains were found in Carlsbad Caverns National Park. According to the Sheriff's Office, remains, believed to be human, were found on the Yucca Canyon Trail.
Was it the Beast of Yucca Flats?
Yeah. So you see, this trend of being taken by the desert has always been and will always be a thing. We went back to the 1600s. We're now talking this year and everything in between. This is a thing.
The original thing with James Arness.
There you go. The thing is, though, when you're in the desert, any desert, you have to respect the fact that the desert wants to kill you and consume your resources. This is just what deserts do.
Yeah.
It's what they do.
Yeah.
And the more remote you get, the more chance the desert has of winning.
Yeah.
One must always keep their head and plan ahead when venturing into territories such as these. This is a lesson that will be learned all too well by those who are the focus of our tale I am now preparing to tell.
That was the background horror stories.
Yeah.
To the horror story.
And I will begin to tell it in the next Side Trail.
There you go.
That's part 1 right there. And so ends the introductory portion of the saga, leaving you hanging a bit. You're still not sure what I'm going to talk about, but, you're a little scared of the desert. That's the point.
Yeah.
And in the next one, we will meet the main players of our tale.
Is this like a murder mystery dinner? Or am I supposed to dress up?
Kind of.
Nice.
Not really mystery. Definitely murder. Murder most foul. Excuse me. Oh. My Igor's coming out again. I haven't seen him since last season.
Yeah. Not the third switch.
Not the third switch. But anywho, anything to add? Anything to ask? Anything to add or subvert before we go, Moss?
You have set the stage. And like I said, I've been in all those deserts, and I have to say I've been in some remote and crazy places myself. And I have to say it gets a little spooky out there in them there hills.
Oh, yes, it does. Have you been to the Carlsbad Caverns?
I have not.
You haven't been there?
No, I have not.
That's a trip
I
worth
tried to
taking.
go there many, many, many years ago, but did not venture that far south off of 40.
We're going to have to figure out a reason to go out there, like do a Roswell trip to do some.
Yeah, Roswell's not that
go
far.
record some UFO stuff in Roswell, and then we can go down to Carlsbad.
Yeah, the thing is with Carlsbad and Roswell, unless you're going to Carlsbad and Roswell, that part of New Mexico, that's it.
Yeah, there's no other reason.
Just
Like
why
that's the
we-
only things.
Why I ended up not going. But yeah, I can think a Roswell trip.
Yeah.
And I know Tony from Vegas always tries to go. He's been to some of those conventions.
Oh, there you go.
We'll have to
Oh yeah, go to Roswell for a convention.
combine forces. When he's driving through, we'll jump in with him.
Perfect.
There you go.
Plan set. Well done, Moz.
Yep.
So we're going to leave it off there. And before you go, please remember you can get early access to all these episodes and side trails in our Patreon for just $1 a month at patreon.com/monsterloretour. And if you haven't yet, please just take a moment before you go to hit the happy little fun buttons with the likes and follows and shares and auto downloads and things like that. If you could, helps us out with the algorithm. The all-powerful algorithm likes downloads. That auto download helps a lot. But anywho, we'll leave you off with that.
So wait, are you saying the Greys are taking their water? Is that where this is going?
I thought it was the reptilians.
Yeah.
Didn't you say the reptilians?
And the Chuds.
Chuds.
I don't think they were ever counted. I think they miss every census because they're underground.
They do not wish to be counted.
Yeah. Well, I think it only hurts their representation in a lot of ways. That someone should explain it to them. I won't. I'll stay in the chopper.
It's all right. They're terraforming the planet for themselves as we speak, so that's all good.
Hey, that explains some of the
Yeah, doesn't
inequality.
it? Doesn't it, though? We'll get into that at a later time, maybe.
Hey, this is a new way the desert can kill you now. Smog.
Yeah, smog will get you good. Both the dragon and the pollution.
Yeah, and the smog monster, which fought Godzilla at least on one occasion.
Oh, yeah. Huh? Forgot about the smog monster.
Who can forget about the smog monster? Yeah.
Okay, I'm losing track of our track here, so we're going to get out of here. Till next time, everybody. Stay groovy, baby. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Side Trail 57 of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the guy that gives a hoot,
Wow.
Mr. Matt Ozero, the Moz. How are we, Moz?
No complaints.
I don't know why I'm talking like I'm about to host an hour of NPR.
Yeah, or like Barry White album kind of DJ.
Next on Smooth Jazz.
Yeah, that guy.
So here we are at Side Trail 57, which is part 2 of this Owl Week Side Trail True Crimey saga. In this segment, we begin to focus in on our specific story as we meet the main players in this real-life monstrous tragedy. This story is about a couple guys like ourselves, actually, Moz. Couple of Northeast guys that become enthralled by the deserts of the Southwest and embark on a journey to find themselves out there on the open road.
Mm-hmm. Always a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Stay home.
That's why we both did it.
No, we did. It's true, we did. And we've survived some desert adventures.
Yeah, but let's start at the beginning of all this, though. First, let us jump into the Wizard of Moz's Wayback Machine to the year 1997. Where I introduce you to a young man full of the vim and vigor of a freshly graduated college student chomping at the bit to get out and see the world. Raffi Kodikian. Raffi just got his degree from Northeastern and has been idolizing Jack Kerouac throughout his college career. And I can totally relate to that. So once he was free of the restraints of academia, he loaded up his Jeep and headed west to live his own version of Kerouac's On the Road. Raffi kept a journal of his travels, parts of which he later got published in the Boston Globe's Sunday Travel section, which in the late 90s was still an impressive feat. He, of course, had some connections to one of the Globe's editors. It's all about who you know, kids.
Back then we had to use Let's Go when we traveled in the 90s.
Yeah. There you go. And, knowing is half the battle, so. Do we know anyone yet, Moss? I feel like we should know somebody by now.
For what?
We're on 57. I don't know, just anybody? feel like we just sit in the studio and para-nerd out all the time.
Yeah. Well, my probation officer comes down through once in a while.
That's true. Maybe he knows somebody he can introduce us to.
Yep.
Any hoot. Let's go now to those original articles from Raffi Kodikian to see how the trip went and maybe glean some insight into the mind of Mr. Kodikian. Here is an excerpt from page M1 of the Boston Globe on Sunday the 19th of July, 1998. Starting from about halfway down the page. You want to start us off with this one, Moz?
I began my trip initially accompanied by Kevin, an old high school friend. We headed to the Tennessee Challenge, an event where 4x4 owners get together to ride trails during the day and party at night. We spent 3 days in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, where our biggest concern was making it back from the trail in one piece and in time for the cookout. After 5 years of worrying about due dates, class schedules, and grades, the lack of responsibility was a godsend. But I guess the real trip didn't start until I dropped Kevin off at the Knoxville airport. That's when it hit me. I was alone, really alone. It was going to be nearly a month before I saw a face that I recognized. No family, no friends, just me. Never have fear and excitement both occupied such large parts of my consciousness at the same time. Things didn't start well. I spent that night trying to correct all the mistakes that my failing internal compass was causing me. Driving a Jeep with Massachusetts plates while lost somewhere in Tennessee wasn't the most comforting thought in the world. For long, my eyelids were feeling about as heavy as my belly was light, but after a quick nap along the riverbank at around 11 p.m., I got to camp, set up my tent, and barely got its zippers closed before I passed out. I was happy the day was over.
From there he goes on a somewhat Kerouacian discourse about the adventures and misadventures he encountered over the next days and weeks. Things never going as planned, but always seeming to come out right kind of stuff. Very stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Raffi seemed like your standard college grad of the times and even a bit more ambitious than most. He got a second part to his adventure story published the next week.
Nice.
Again, getting front page of the travel section, although bumped to the bottom half this time. But still, that's pretty impressive for the time, for a guy fresh out of college. Mm. Let's go to that next article from the 26th of July, 1998, for a bit on his experience in the Chihuahuan Desert area of New Mexico, overlapping at times with El Jornada del Muerto, discussed in part 1. I arrived at White Sands the next day and found the campground, basically a sand dune 3/10 of a mile from the road. I lugged my gear across the sand to the site, where I just staked my tent down without setting it up and dropped my gear so I could head into the park to take pictures. Not long after leaving, I noticed a rainstorm coming, so I headed back to camp to put the top up on the Jeep and throw my stuff under the tent. On the way, I noticed the wind had started picking up. It wasn't long before sand was in the air and I knew I needed to move. I started to run, but by the time I was halfway there, all I saw in front of me was a sheet of white. The sand felt like a sand blaster on my bare legs, and I had lost my sense of direction. I had to decide whether to lie down or ball up or move as fast as I could in what I thought was the right direction of the Jeep. I opted to move, and when the wind let up slightly and my legs could do it, I ran. For all I knew, I could have been headed straight into the desert, but as I came over the top of the next dune, I could barely make out the Jeep about 50 yards away. Thank God. When I got there, I realized that in my haste to get to camp and cover my things, I had made one stupid mistake. I had locked my keys inside. But what the Jeep lacks in security, it makes up for in emergency accessibility. I unzipped the rear window and lunged in, sand and all. So it seems like in Raffi's first trip to the Chihuahuan Desert, he had a close call with the elements there.
Yeah, they didn't have a zipper. You know, if you didn't have one of those canvas zippery things in the back of your Jeep, would have been a different outcome potentially.
Yeah, and I doubt he knew at that point how dangerous it really was to run blind into a sandstorm like that. And lucky for him, he was going the right way. Mm. You know, off by 10 degrees or more, and he could have run right past all his stuff, right past the Jeep.
Kept going.
You know, just kept on going. By the time the storm clears, he has no idea where he is. But he made it and carried on with his journey, seeing the country and taking it all in, recording it all in his journal along the way. In the end, it seems Raffi found his own version of the road Kerouac had written about, and he fell in love with it, and particularly the deserts of the Southwest. When Raffi returned from his long solo adventure, he was greeted by his then best friends, Kirsten and Dave. Long story, not really short, Kirsten knew Dave from being his girlfriend's friend, and when Kirsten moved to the area, Dave's girlfriend drafted him into helping her find an apartment in the city, even though they were way out in western Massachusetts at UMass Amherst, as Dave knew Boston very well. It was then that Dave and Kirsten became friends. Not long after moving into this new apartment that Dave helped her find in the city, Kirsten kept bumping into her neighbor by the name of Raffi Kodikian. This was in Raffi's sophomore year, so a couple of years before his big journey into the heart of America we were just talking about. But by the time he arrived back from that journey, he and Kirsten had been broken up for some time, long enough to do that things that some people do when they stay close friends with their exes after a reasonable separation period. Whew. Very emotionally mature of them. Yeah. But anywho, it's one of those roundabout things that life does. Dave knows Kirsten because she's friends with his girlfriend. Then Kirsten gets Raffi as a boyfriend and introduces him to Dave, who quickly becomes Raffi's best friend. So Dave ends up breaking up with his girlfriend, that's Kirsten's friend, but stays friends with Kirsten because of Raffi. And even though Kirsten and Raffi break up, the three of them somehow all in the end up besties better than the resties. Like their own version of the Always Sunny crew in search of their Charlie and Frank.
There you go. I sort of follow that.
Yeah, did you catch all that?
I catch most of it. Yeah.
I get caught up in the gossip and I lose track of myself sometimes.
There you go.
But okay then. That's the dynamic there. Let us now properly meet this Dave of which we speak, as he will be the other main player in this truly monstrous tale. Trust me, we'll start getting there next week. We got to do our preambles here first, because it's short versions. Anywho, David Coughlin, by all accounts, was a smart, friendly, trustworthy young graduate with a college degree. This is the point in a young, pampered life when a lot of people make the mistake of thinking things will just happen for them. They did not happen for David. He floundered a bit after graduation, suffering a bit of a failure to launch, and ended up living in his parents' basement and getting a job no one else wanted at his local city hall. The job was manning the phone at the parking department's complaint department. It was a job no one else wanted because of the non-stop verbal abuse it inflicted on anyone who answered the phone, mostly due to perfectly legit parking tickets. But David was tenacious in his positivity. One of his co-workers is quoted as saying, "People would call and just scream at him, and I mean screaming, profanities, the whole thing. David would just sit there on the phone and smile, polite as can be. He never lost his cool." So David seemed overall a very positive and emotionally stable young man. But he could also be quite spontaneous and occasionally surprise those close to him. Could you please read us the following passage from Journal of the Dead by Jason Kirsten, please, Moz?
A friend of Dave remembers that one day he showed up at his house with a videotape, coolly put into the VCR, and grinned proudly as he watched himself jumping out of an airplane tied tandem to another skydiver. "I was blown away," said the friend. He never once mentioned that he wanted to skydive. But he was like that. He didn't talk much about doing things. He'd just do them.
There you go. After a while of floundering at work and sneaking out of his parents' house at night, like he was still a high schooler or something, to go party with Raffi and Kirsten, his father gave him a figurative push out of the nest because it was time to fly. This is when David put his spontaneous side to work. This being the end of the 1990s, a lot of people weren't very good with computers and related technologies. This is back in the times when you would have to actually go to places to buy things, like anything.
Things, yeah.
Remember those days, Moss?
I do. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go, man. But so Dave put some of that fresh college knowledge to work at work. According to his co-worker, Arnold Wakeland, quote, he brought in a laptop computer and did a PowerPoint presentation. It was the slickest thing. There he was running the whole thing from this little computer. He was a smart, resourceful guy. Now, all you younger than Gen Xers out there may think this is a ridiculous thing to say, but even just walking around with a laptop in 1999 was pretty cool. Knowing how to actually use it to accomplish something meaningful like that and like actually do a real PowerPoint presentation effectively, that was a real skill at that point that most people didn't have. You remember when PowerPoint was like the rage, Moss?
Yeah.
It was like all there was.
Yeah. The latest, greatest.
Yeah. So David's display of tech knowledge got him an instant promotion from the oldies at the office, who had no idea how to work one of those little magic boxes.
Mm-hmm.
With the promotion came a raise, and David started seeing a potential future for himself at City Hall. But with the advancement and seeing that a little effort in the right direction could go a long way, he was quickly unsatisfied with his new station and was looking to move onward and upward. What David really wanted to do was environmental management. He was ahead of his time getting all green in the late 90s, and he had heard about a new college out in California that specialized in just that sort of thing. It was a 2-year course, what would essentially be a master's degree for David, and they specialized in getting their graduates jobs after matriculating. It was suddenly David's dream, so he planned a vacation out west to run a scouting mission. One point to make about the trip, David did not go alone. He was accompanied by Kirsten. David had a serious girlfriend at the time, and Raffi and Kirsten had been broken up for like a long time at that point, and had been hanging as friends for a good while. All it was is David wanted a friend to come along for support, and Kirsten actually had family in California, and she was available to go. So it seems that really was all there was to it, but I did just want to mention it because it will come back up, later on in the saga. So it turns out this new school was not only in paradisical, or at least compared to Massachusetts, paradisical California, but it was located almost on the beach in a brand new state-of-the-art facility. David was blown away. He was going to make it happen. But there was one catch. In order to qualify for acceptance at this new college of David's dreams, one had to be a resident of the state. The decision was quickly and decisively made.
He moved to Alaska.
After a week in California taking in the sunshine and ocean waves, David returned to City Hall with his resignation in hand. His 2 weeks were given. He was moving to California.
Gonna eat a lot of peaches.
Moved to California. Gonna eat a lot of peaches. Plans were begun in earnest. David Coughlin was moving west, but first he was going to have an adventure like the one Raffi wrote about in his Sunday Globe articles. Like so many trailblazers before him, David was going to adventure through the American West on his way to starting a new life in California. That's like the oldest story in America, maybe there.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah. It will prove to be a truly fateful trip for the two young men we have just finished meeting. We will begin our tour of their trail in earnest in next week's Side Trail. It's a bit of a short one. I just needed to get us to the next point. But now we've met Raffi and Dave.
All the main players.
We're ready for our trip across the country.
No, I'm not ready. I don't have my Let's Go book.
For the two of them to ride into their potential
Sunset.
Futures.
Yep. Potential.
I was going to say potential futures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any questions at this point, Moss?
No, I'm looking forward. Well, not looking forward. I'm scared for these folks.
Yeah,
We've been in the desert when things have gone wrong.
It's going to get ugly.
Yeah, before it gets uglier.
There was a reason I went through that whole death in the desert thing before I started this part.
Yeah, I read Kerouac and did my wandering around for a couple of years around kicking it around. So with my beat up cover, my beat up copy of On the Road.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, I was an English major right around the same time in place where Raffi was going to school, so I wasn't too far off from this story.
Yeah.
There's definitely a personal element in it for me. But anywho, yeah, we're going to leave you hanging on that. We'll be back next week when we get into this story proper. Until then, thanks for everyone for listening. So there's that. Anything else, Moss, before we go? Oh, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/monsterlore tour. It's only $1 a month. You can get early release of all the episodes in Side Trail.
And if you give your $1 a month, we can get a Let's Go book and find our way out of the desert.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, we're going to go. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Till next time, keep on believing. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Side Trail 58 and Act 3 of this Side Trail Saga of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the guy that's mostly feathers, Mr. Moz. How we doing, Moz?
Is this the act where we find what happens to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern?
This is the act when we set up the time when we find out what happens to them.
Wow.
It's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting correlation to Dave and Raffi in this story, actually.
Happy days. Are we going to jump the shark in this podcast right now?
I thought I already did that when I did the undrownable, unbreakable thing.
Damn you.
Never going to let you forget that one. That's like a shining moment of MLT glory for me.
No, The Shining was episode 16.
12 and 13,
Dang
Stanley
it.
Hotel.
Dang it, I'm not as good as him at that.
So we last left off with David deciding on a move to California, just quit his job. And this will require a drive across the country. Ever since Raffi's solo drive about around America, David has been wanting such an experience of his own, but unlike Raffi, he would rather not go it alone. So he's hoping that Raffi will be able to join him on his final jaunt as an East Coaster, at least for probably the next couple of years.
Final jaunt? Dun, dun, dun.
Raffi's nature tugged at him with desire to join David on his journey. But at this point, Raffi was no longer the free-to-roam hippie he was a couple of years ago. He was now a hippie with a job.
Damn it.
And there was no more vacation time for wanderlusting. Raffi resigned himself to planning stages only for David's Kerouacian journey. But it was hard for a guy like Raffi to be stuck on the sidelines. Here is how Raffi's Boston Globe travel saga finished on July 26th, 1998. Quote, "My trip has been caked on my tires, dripped on my boots, and seared into my memory as one of the greatest experiences I could have imagined. And God willing, I'll get the chance to do it again."
Must be a demiurge he's praying to right now.
Raffi dreamed of the road that David would be walking alone. The existential angst emitting from his pores must have been palpable, but he ventured on.
He writes in cliches a lot.
That was me. I feel like
you write in cliches a lot.
My Kerouacian side started coming out while I wrote these, so forgive me if my language gets a little
stream of consciousness.
Yeah. Very stream of consciousness-y at times.
You're like that, and it's not too far from your nougat.
Right. I just got a little bit deeper into it because Kerouac kept coming up in this, so it affected me a little bit.
Or it's Kerouac, you ought to know by now.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Billy Joel?
I Billy
really?
Joel'd you right in the face.
You just Billy Joel'd my Jack Kerouac?
That's terrible.
Good Lord. I don't know if we can be friends anymore, Moss. This is
You're right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're right. Sorry. Okay. So in conclusion,
I'm just going to move on and forget that ever happened. It didn't help that Raffi had huge aspirations to be a renowned journalist after getting his travelogue published in the coveted Sunday travel section of the Boston Globe. It was a simpler time then, stuff like that mattered. But this being the late 90s, almost 2000s, we were entering the age of the death of old-style journalism. So there just wasn't a lot of opportunity in a big market with a long-established paper. So as punishment for his anti-establishmentarian dirty hippie ideals, he was remanded to a lackluster, soul-sucking corporate desk job writing about mutual funds. Ugh.
Yeah.
In his hatred of the position, he had already used up all his allocated vacation time, hence his inability to once again be free on the mythical road.
So he quit.
Well, hold on. He's not quite that hippie. But Raffi was a good sport about it. He mapped out his previous route for David, adjusting to avoid the parts he maybe wish he had, but essentially lined David up to take a very similar route to the one Raffi had taken a couple of years prior. They may not be able to travel the road together, but this way they could at least extensively compare notes once David's trip was done.
So Raffi stayed back on the chopper.
So it came to be, just days before David's departure, that the gang of friends, the three stooges of Raffi, David, and Kirsten, as well as David's girlfriend at the time, whose name was Sonnet, lovely, got together for one last dinner before David left for a time untold.
No haiku on this journey?
Somebody might write one somewhere. As David sat musing on all the places he would soon go, the adventure that would ensue, whether he liked it or not, it was too much for Raffi to take. "Screw it!" Raffi shouted. "I'm going with you, man. They can take this job and shove it. I'm going back out on the road." I'm totally paraphrasing / improvising this scene right now. That's probably not at all how it actually went down, especially the take this job and shove it part.
Because it's probably... That might have happened after that.
Because what Raffi actually did was he contacted his work, and they gave him some unpaid leave to go on his adventure.
Ah.
They were probably sick of him moping around the office all day, musing on his dirty hippie dreams anyway. You know what I'm saying, Moss? They were probably like, "Yeah, go ahead, kid. Take all the time you need." Have you ever quit a job so you could go adventuring around America, Moss?
Yep.
Me too.
There you go.
Maybe we still can be friends.
I got a lot of
That's
crap.
good. See, we're healing our friendship now after that last incident that we won't speak of anymore. Anywho, David was so happy that Raffi was making it happen that he pushed back his leave date for 2 weeks while Raffi got his affairs in order. The boys would be on the road together just like they both wanted it to be. It was the best of times.
You're not going to say the next part.
No, I'm going to leave it hanging right there because it's very ominous. ... When the journey started, Raffi began another travel journal, so we have a pretty good record of how their trip progressed. The first stop, after jumping on the Mass Pike West, better known as I-90, which is the way to get anywhere west from Boston, by the way.
It's a way to not drive when you're on a highway.
But their first stop was Raffi's hometown of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. That's Bucks County, PA.
I'm familiar with it.
You got a Bucks County pub for me, Moss?
I have Frank's Pub in Norristown, Doylestown. Gosh, I know I'm Frank. Oh, I got a Norristown pub. Mm-hmm. I've been in a pub in Doylestown, downtown Doylestown. I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I have a pub across the little Delaware River there in New Jersey, in New Hope. I have pubs there.
So you know where all the beer is.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good to know.
But I'm sad because I can't remember the name of the pub I was in Doylestown.
I
know the girl's name, but I'm not saying it.
I'm actually pretty happy about that. It's hard to stump you in that game.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania bars, for some reason.
No.
Anywho, Raffi, it turns out, came from some money, so his family place was noticeably more luxurious than David's, and they even got to take the dad's super fancy Beamer out to meet up with Raffi's high school friends. Needless to say, they tied one on a little bit. You know how that is, right?
Been there.
The next day, after a breakfast that apparently consisted of cherries and pretzels.
Which is what Lechuza smells like.
I thought it was lavender and strawberries.
I thought you weren't listening.
And not sure if that's a PA thing or what. You did some PA time, obviously, Mozzie. Cherries and pretzels, is this a thing you've heard of?
No.
They got up, they ate that, they got back on the road. This day would find them landing in Gainesville, Virginia, home of David's sister at the time. So they're being nice boys. They're stopping in with all the family before they go take off on their adventure, which is nice. But that was the last of the family stops. They were venturing off into foreign lands where they had no family left to visit. It was into rare country for those born east of the Mississippi that they traveled, by which I mean they were heading west of the Mississippi, out into flyover country where the lowlander salty sea dogs of the coast rarely dare to tread. Too much? Was that too much, Moz? You know that's statistically true. Most people born east of the Mississippi in the States never go west. They go north and south. They all go to Florida for vacation.
The same with, like the people who retire in the Southwest have to be a little closer. It's like Michigan and over.
Yeah.
There's a line.
West of the Mississippi, you retire in Arizona. East of the Mississippi, you retire in Florida.
What is that about?
I don't know. It's weird. It became this natural boundary that so many people never cross.
Because the witches can't cross the river, the Mississippi.
Ooh.
There's a boundary there. Clearly a boundary.
Is it the Mississippi a major like ley line energy kind of spot?
It must be.
We'll have to get into that at some point.
We'll have to talk to the Pukwudgie woman about that.
Oh, there you go. That's actually... We gotta talk to her, So where was I? As they began to traverse the highways and byways of Middle America, they made their next stop, Nashville, Tennessee, the Music City. The next day, they made it all the way to New Orleans, with a stop for a tour of Graceland along the way, because how can you not when you're around the Memphis area?
It's like a rule.
Now, keep in mind that they are not only keeping a staggering pace when you look at the miles per day they're driving, but they're hitting the bars in all these party towns every night. Yeah. Every night's a different party town with a big bar scene, and they're hitting it every time.
Nice.
This may be what you'd expect of two young bucks out sowing their proverbial oats.
Bucks County.
There you go. But just keep in mind the wear and tear they are putting on themselves as the trip progresses. We'll talk more on that later. After another consecutive night of drinking and general debauchery, maybe even some rampant asswangery on Bourbon Street, the boys managed to make it all the way to Austin by the end of the next day.
Or at least Austin city limits.
It's about 500 miles from New Orleans to Austin.
Yeah.
Which isn't as far as they got on previous days, but after all those miles and all those drinks in such a short period of time, they found themselves wiped out once they got to Austin. I'm tired just thinking about it.
I don't think there's a lot to stop at between New Orleans and Austin.
No, yeah, East Texas is open country, man.
Yeah.
Nothing but sky out there.
Yep.
But these guys aren't the type to waste a night in the biggest little party town in Texas. So they once again found themselves out at the local bars, as they had been every night of the trip. They took the opportunity now to discuss the logistics of the rest of their journey. I'm actually going to have Moz read us an excerpt from Jason Kirsten's book, Journal of the Dead, to describe the conversation. If you could please, Moz.
Over beers at a local bar, they talked over their itinerary. They'd been making great time. They were a whole day ahead of schedule, but the pace was starting to get to them. The trip was more than half over, but all those miles seemed disproportionate to what they'd actually seen, which really wasn't much more than a few streets, bars, and tourist traps in a few different cities. Their plan for the next day was to swing northwest to Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle, then west towards Santa Fe. From there, it would be a straight shot west to the Grand Canyon, which they were planning to see on Thursday. As they discussed what lay ahead, Dave remembered something he'd heard during one of many going-away conversations he'd had in previous weeks. If you have a chance, check out Carlsbad Caverns. It's pretty incredible, an uncle of his had told him. The caverns, Coughlin now realized, were almost due west of them, which meant that seeing them wouldn't put a big dent in their Grand Canyon plans. They could simply head north on Thursday instead, swinging through Phoenix. He ran the idea by Raffi. Yeah, that sounds good, he told Dave. Let's check out Carlsbad Caverns. I'm glad he clarified and said it's good that they're going to Carlsbad, not Phoenix, because I think that would have made no sense if he said, we're going to head through Phoenix. Yeah, that sounds good. No one's ever said that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no one does that really on purpose.
No.
So it was decided. The next day would see them head to New Mexico in the heart of the Chihuahuan Desert. home of El Jornada del Muerto and Rattlesnake Canyon. Did it just get all ominous in here, Moz, or is it just me?
Yeah.
Anyone who heard part one.
Yeah.
The next day was another 500-plus mile drive, this time across the desolate flatlands of West Texas into equally as desolate southern New Mexico. For those of you who have done this drive, you will understand why I repeat the word desolate. And for those that haven't, you may never have experienced desolation as total as this.
I think Silver City is on that route.
Yeah, but in between the places where there's actually something, there's nothing.
No, I get it.
I mean, you get into the Southwest. It's really all over the Southwest and a lot of Texas where when you leave town, there's nothing for long stretches to get to the next town. Like, it's mostly empty space.
Every one of my family and friends that moved from the east and went on bar crawls have all died in the desert, and I've never found any of them. That's why I decided not to do it again. I just said, I'm going to stay here now.
Oh, boy. But this is definitely a strange land for a couple of East Coast kids, especially for David, who's seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
You never really forget your first time, do you, Maz? I remember my first time in the desert.
Oh,
coming from the Northeast.
Glad you put that qualifier in there.
Right. I remember the first lightning storm I saw in the desert. What I now know was my first Chubasco experience. It was then that I became enthralled with the deserts of the Southwest myself. And it took me about, how long was it, like 15 years or so to actually finally move out here. And after 20 years of living here, I'm still enthralled.
Oh, yeah. Big sky country.
By the great American desert.
No argument.
As I call it.
No argument. But Jim Morrison said it best. The West is the best.
The Southwest is the best.
The best Western is better than the roadway Inn.
The mistake Jim Morrison made was leaving the desert and going all the way to the coast.
Yeah, he shouldn't have. No, yeah.
Yeah.
He should have gone further west than Santa Monica Pier and into the ocean at that point.
Yeah, if you go that far west, just keep on going to Hawaii, man. Just go to Hawaii.
Yeah, I agree.
How long have you been out here, Maz? You've been out here longer than I have, haven't you?
17, 6, about 3 years.
Did you come because of the abundance of hermit caves available?
I came because the weather is better out here. I like the blue skies. I like the big skies. And
yeah, once you get used to that big sky, you can't go back.
No.
You really can't.
It's very claustrophobic out back where I'm from.
Yeah.
And now it's big sky country.
There you go. But let's get back to David and Raffi in the year 1999 here. They pulled into White's City, named for James White, the original popularizer of the Carlsbad Caverns, at around 5 p.m. Road weary, still hungover from the previous nights of drinking, and just generally roughed up. But regardless of their physical condition, they were excited to be there, and they decided to rough it in the desert that night. They arrived at the Carlsbad Caverns Visitor Center just as the final tour of the day was letting out, and the ranger was answering final questions from the tourists. At sunset, it was told, there would be a massive expulsion of bats from one of the caves. It was a nightly occurrence so reliable that the park built a small viewing amphitheater around the cave mouth.
Sounds like Ajo Guano to me.
It's crazy batshit going on here, man. Flying out in waves. At first just a few, but steadily more and more, there come clouds of tens of thousands of bats, blackening the twilight sky as they erupt forth to hunt the desert night for food. This exodus can last well over an hour to complete. That's a lot of bats.
Do you remember the Nightwing movie? I think that was filmed there. I'm not sure. 1980s Nightwing.
It rings a bell.
Yeah.
It's not really in my head, though.
Yeah.
That'll be my homework. You got to watch Secret of NIMH, and I'll watch whatever you just said.
You don't have to watch Nightwing. You just have to
Nightwing.
Look it up on IMDb and read the summary.
Gotcha. One of those movies, huh?
Yeah, one of those movies.
Unfortunately, David and Raffi would need to get their campsite spotted and set before dark, which left them no time for viewing the spectacle of bats. So they waited for the crowd to clear and asked the attendant ranger where the nearest in-park camping could be found. He told them the nearest spot would be Rattlesnake Canyon.
It's where I send every visitor when I'm the Ranger Rick.
It was about 5 more miles down the road to the trailhead parking lot, then a mile or so hike down into the canyon proper, where you were free to pitch a tent anywhere you liked. With the day fading, they pondered once again staying in a cookie-cutter hotel, but they wanted at least one night of real adventure on this trip, and they were far enough in without one, they didn't want to risk missing out. Once they were sure, the ranger gave them the standard park camping permit to fill out. They listed their license plate number, names, and a 1-day length of stay. The ranger gave them a carbon copy and filed the report in a draw.
A 3-hour tour. Gotcha.
Before the boys headed out, the ranger gave them the breakdown on the rules of survival while camping in remote desert environs. Jason Kirsten's book explains it thusly. Lock your car. Don't build any fires. Use a gas cooking stove. Pack out what you pack in. Don't disturb any plants and animals. Buy a topographical map. One of the rules, however, was emphasized above all others. It appeared in a typeface that was italicized, capitalized, and underlined. Quote, "There is no water in the backcountry, so you must carry what you need. A minimum of 1 gallon per person per day is recommended."
Mountain Dew doesn't count.
And I will add to that you should really carry at least twice what they recommend when going into the wilds, especially in the desert, even if for what you think will be an afternoon.
Right.
There's a big Gilligan effect in the desert where a lot of people head out for a 3-hour hike and inadvertently spend days out there. But we'll get into more of that stuff at the end of the saga here. So the boys went to the park store where they split the duties to expedite the mission. David was in charge of the map. He procured the recommended topographical map. Mission accomplished. Raffi was in charge of the water. For some reason, after telling people to stock up on water, the store only offered pint-sized water bottles for sale. This seems a bit short-sighted on the park's part, but it is what it is at this point, right? I'm sure they had some fill stations for people's personal water vessels, but the boys didn't really have that. But anywho, according to the recommendation they were given, Raffi would have needed to purchase 16 of the pint bottles to properly allot for 2 people for 1 day.
And nobody's doing that. I agree with Raffi, sadly.
He bought 3.
Okay, that's a little low.
3.
Yeah, okay.
3 pints, 2 people.
That's the witching number.
Oh my God, and it's 3.
Yeah. Owls and aliens, man.
So, 2 problems here. First, the obvious.
3 problems.
2 problems here. First, the obvious. Not nearly enough water. That one's easy. The second might not be so readily obvious, but for me it is glaring. The topographical map. Why would that be the one the park suggests to guests?
I said it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did they send them into this remote canyon?
I'm a map
with
guy.
No water places to purchase water.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm a map guy. I've been actively working with maps pretty much on a daily basis my whole working life, for the most part anyway. And I find a well-rendered map actually to be a work of art. I love maps. If they found
a well, it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. But a good topographical map of the Grand Canyon is really like a beautiful thing to behold when you see it on paper. But for most people, a topographical map is kind of a foreign thing when it comes to actual navigation. Even for someone with real experience, and I can speak from experience, they can still be a little tricky to decipher when you're immersed in the terrain and don't know precisely where you are already.
Yeah.
So we're off to an auspicious start for the boys here, Moz.
Yeah.
But let's continue following their journey. So these untested in the West East Coast boys head into the western wilds. They are bedraggled from 6 straight days of hard driving for a total of about 2,700 miles and 5 consecutive nights of hard drinking in between. Here is what they brought with them into Rattlesnake Canyon, according to Jason Kirsten's book. As far as camping gear went, they considered themselves well equipped. Raffi and David indeed had some of the core items such as pocket knives, hats, sunglasses, boots, flashlights, matches, band-aids, and cigarette lighters. But there were key items they didn't have: a compass, a signal mirror, binoculars, a whistle, and a first aid kit.
Whistle's only going to attract evil.
The compass gets me, dude. How do you go out there without a compass? Yeah. The rest of their gear was standard camping equipment that's good to have anywhere. For shelter, they had a tent, sleeping bags, foam pads. And for cooking, they had a portable stove, fuel, 3 frying pans, dishes, and some Tupperware containers. To eat, they packed a can of creamed corn, a large can of beans, half a bag of hot dogs, some buns, and a few energy bars. Among the numerous trivial items they brought in were some playing cards and a few cigars. Raffi also brought along his journal and some pens. When's the last time you even ate creamed corn and baked beans? Well, we don't really eat that out here either, do we? I grew up on that stuff back east, and I never even see it anymore.
Well, they called it elote out here.
Oh, there you go. And I will say, ranch beans, far superior to baked beans. I'm sorry, Boston, but it's true.
Because they're free-range beans, and they let them run wild before they collect them and put them in a can.
You can taste the difference in them being able to run wild like that.
It's true.
But I also feel like they were way overpacked for one night. Why do you need 3 frying pans? Why do you need both dishes and Tupperware containers? It's just like a bunch of extra weight you're carrying out into the desert, you know? But I digress again. We'll get back into that a little more later. So the boys loaded up their packs, locked the car.
You can't mix the corn chowder with the beans. I mean,
you don't want to mix creamed corn and beans.
No. So you needed 2. The third one, well,
maybe
was superfluous.
You don't eat all your food at the same time. That's never a thing you should do.
Yeah.
Anywho, so the boys loaded up their packs, locked the car, and headed down the rocky trail into Rattlesnake Canyon. It should be noted that they left one of their 2 unopened Gatorade bottles. So they did have 2 Gatorade bottles on top of the 3 pints of water.
Right.
They left one of the Gatorade bottles in the car, presumably to be consumed when they returned. The other they brought with them. So 3 pint bottles of water and 1 Gatorade. Okay? It was about a 20-minute hike down to the wide, sandy canyon floor. When they hit the bottom, they were already sweating hard from hiking in the harsh desert sun, to which they were unaccustomed. They stopped to each drink a noticeable portion of the pint-sized water bottles they carried. Once they hit the canyon floor, they could have set up camp almost literally anywhere. There isn't a lot of traffic in Rattlesnake Canyon to begin with.
And there's no water at the bottom of Rattlesnake Canyon.
Correct. As the sign said, there's 0 water out there. And at this point in the day, any hikers would be cleared out and they would have the place to themselves. But instead of just picking a spot and settling in near the base of the trail, they decided to hike farther in. The map showed 2 choices. One solid line denoting a well-tended trail heading down canyon to their left, and a dotted line denoting a primitive, untended trail heading up canyon to their right. Which trail did they choose, Moz?
I would say the dotted one.
Very good, correct.
With the skull and crossbones on
correct.
Drawn on it.
With the monster drawn at the end.
Yeah,
the path less traveled by, as it were. And it's going to make a big difference. Excuse me, getting a little frosty over here. So they headed up canyon along the primitive, relatively untraveled trail for nearly a mile. Then they thought it a good idea to leave the trail completely for a remote side canyon. Here they finally stopped to set up camp on what sounds like a natural sandbar against one of the canyon's stone-faced sides. They made dinner, consuming the hot dogs and creamed corn, reserving the baked beans for a later time. See, you nailed that one, Moss. You nailed that one. And went to bed content that they had managed to make their desired night in the western wilds a reality. But before they bedded down for the night, they took the time to pass their 1 bottle of Gatorade back and forth until the bottle was empty. In the morning, they awoke with smiles. It was a beautiful and foreign landscape to which they awoke, and they were anxious to get back into the park so they could see the famous Carlsbad Caverns for themselves. Maybe they would even stick around till sunset so they could see the nightly bat show. They hiked for what they thought to be about a mile, back down canyon, and they spotted a rock cairn on the side of the canyon floor, marking the start of a trail. For those who don't know, a rock cairn is a built stack of stone that marks the trail. It seemed to them like the place they had come down the night before. It was getting warm again under the Chihuahuan sun, so they stopped for a water break.
Didn't have any.
Get this. They had used what was left in their initial pint bottles to boil the hot dogs.
Oh, boy.
They had fry pans, Moz. They used water to boil the hot dogs. And they had consumed the entire bottle of Gatorade the night before. They were now left with a single pint of water for both of them. Their minds were already turning to the Gatorade left in the car. Thinking of that bottle of Gatorade was nearly within their reach. They split what was left of their on-hand water, just a half pint each, to get them up the hill to the car.
Anyone drink the hot dog water? Because I would have.
Right? I would have poured that right back in the bottle. Mm-hmm. But soon after heading up the trail, they realized this trail didn't go to the parking lot. This definitely was not their trail. So they doubled back, trying desperately to recognize something that would point their way back to the car. But the more they looked, the more they realized that everything looked different in the light of day. And they couldn't honestly say they recognized anything about the place. As Raffi scanned the hillside for anything resembling another trail, David pulled out the recommended topographical map of the area. It was then they realized they didn't know how to really read a topographical map, being already immersed in the landscape. It may as well have been a Rorschach test. I hate to think what they saw hidden in those undecipherable lines. It didn't take long for the new reality to set in. It was late morning in the Chihuahuan Desert. The sun was quickly heating the world around them. They were already out of water without being properly hydrated to begin with due to all the hard traveling, and they were undeniably lost. It is about the worst predicament one can find themselves in when traveling the Great American Desert. So what are the boys to do at this point?
Circle K.
I guess we'll find out next time in the concluding segment of this Side Trail Saga.
But wait, they only know Wawas in that area. They're never going to find the Circle K.
Is it Wawas in New Mexico?
No, it's Wawas in Doylestown.
Oh, that's back. Oh, they don't even know Circle K.
Yeah, they don't.
I see your point.
They're in trouble.
I see your point.
Yep.
Add or subvert anything before we go, Moz. I think my brain's kind of fried.
I am greatly saddened by where you've brought us so far.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this one went long, so let me just ask all you listeners out there to please hit those happy fun buttons before you go, like, subscribe, follow, share with your friends, all that. And the biggest favor you can do us these days is hit that auto download button on the Monster Lore Tour on your favorite podcast app. The algorithm judges us on downloads, so it will help us out there. And that way, you will never miss a stop on the Monster Lore Tour.
Or one bat flying out of the Carlsbad Caverns.
The lone bat.
Hey, I have an idea.
Huh.
What if we open up a bar out there called the Carlsbad Tavern?
I bet there's one already.
Damn it.
I bet if we look it up, it's already a thing. If not, we should do that, though.
Oh, yeah. We have terrible ideas that we're willing to throw money at.
Oh, terrible. And you just said that in public, so it's already going to be done before we get there anyway.
Damn it.
So thanks, everybody, for coming. Until the next time, keep on squatching. Begin now. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Side Trail 59 of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here with my co-host and the man who is not what he appears to be, Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. The Moz. How we doing, Moz?
Very true what you say.
Very true. Are you ready for the conclusion of this 4-part true crimey side trail excursion?
No. No.
Yeah, it's hard to prepare for something like this. We're going to get deep and dark on this one. And in that mode, As this saga was written as a series of side trails for Maz's Owl episodes, I would like to start in Maz honoring fashion, that is, with a poignant quote. This is an excerpt from the book by Craig Childs, referenced back in part 1, The Secret Knowledge of Water. An ecologist working in the desert once looked straight at me and with a quiet voice told me to be careful. I don't know what it is about the place, she said, but there are hoodoos out there. She then started telling me stories I did not want to hear. One researcher had her vehicle burned to the ground with a total loss of equipment and records. It burned for no reason. Hoodoos is an odd word for a uniformed federal scientist to be using, as if warning me of ghosts, but the word stayed with me. Have you felt the hoodoos lurking in the dark desert night, Maz?
Say now, who do you think you're fooling? I think the hoodoos are from like Bryce Canyon, like there's those rock formations.
Yeah, there you go.
Little rock formations.
There you go. You know where there's a lot of those? Out towards Four Corners.
There you go.
Where the
Monument Valley area.
The hub of skin
walkers
activity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting a little bit. I figured the hoodoos would be very curious about your hermit cave.
There you go.
I thought you might have some stories there.
But sounds like I don't want them to
maybe
come.
Maybe your energies keep them at bay.
I'm trying. I really am. Defense is against the black arts is really important.
There you go. Do you think these hoodoos may be the desert version of the little people that seem to be so ubiquitous everywhere?
Yeah.
Those stories you do?
We do have to hit on some American elves one of these days.
Some desert wudgies.
Yep.
Yep. Any hoot, something to think about. One more thing before we get into it. This is where our story does turn very dark, so I'm going to do the PSA trigger warning thing again like I did in part 1. We will be making references to thoughts of self-harm, acts of real violence, other truly horrible things. So please feel free to skip this part if you don't want us putting that in your brain right now. Come back around when you're in the mood for some deep darkness. So now on with our tale. We are at the point of realization for the boys. They are lost in the infamous Rattlesnake Canyon that spurred the horrible headlines back in part 1. Not only that, but they are out of water, can't read their map, and are completely unfamiliar with the environment and general surroundings. So what do? They kept their heads up, is what they did, and good for them for it. There was only so much area in which the trail could lie, and they had just come down it the night before and remembered a rock cairn at the base that they were sure they would find if they just surveyed the area more closely. David and Raffi grew less sure of themselves as the sun crept up over the canyon walls and began to beat down on the canyon floor. The rocks and sand would warm quickly in the direct sun, and there was little to be had for shade from the scrubby shrub brush of the desert. This was maybe not being so much fun anymore. For those unfamiliar, deserts undergo huge temperature swings from daytime highs to nighttime lows. Changes of 40-plus degrees are the norm, and swings of 60-plus degrees are possible with the right weather patterns. The morning in the canyon would have been pleasant enough for hiking, mid-70s maybe and shady. But when that sun comes over the rim of the canyon, the air temperature will rise at about 3 degrees an hour, and the rocks and sand will warm noticeably faster than that. Ground temp can be tens of degrees higher than the air temp once everything gets a good dose of sun. And in a wide-bottom canyon like Rattlesnake, the sun will be hitting the canyon floor for most of its daily arc. The boys began to sweat, literally and figuratively. As their situation grew noticeably more dire, after multiple passes along the trail side with no luck at finding the trail, they retreated to some shade under a bank of shrubs. A plan of action was necessary. Things were getting all too real. It had been 3 hours now since they had broken camp, whistling their way along the canyon without a care in the world, the adventures of the day awaiting them. Now they silently cowered from the blazing desert sun, wondering just how bad a situation they'd got themselves into. So what do?
I'd hit the Circle K.
Always know where your Circle K is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first, a little luck came their way in the form of an early afternoon chubasco. It was the summer rainy season, like we talked about in the first segment of the saga, and luckily one of the storms passed right over them. Acting quickly enough to take some benefit from the rain, they each managed to fill their pint bottles about 3/4 full. It's pretty good work.
Mm-hmm.
This time they saw the importance of what little they had. As thirsty as they were, they drank only a small portion of the water collected, saving what would hopefully be enough to get them through this ordeal. With water came hope, and they were able to think a little more clearly. The camping permit they filled out for the ranger came to mind. Someone knew they were there, and they had put in for just the day. If they didn't check back in soon, someone would be coming looking for them, right? They knew they couldn't be too far from where they originally entered the canyon, but they could no longer judge at all if they had overshot or not gone far enough. So instead of stumbling around in the midday Chihuahuan desert sun, they decided to wait where they were for the rangers to come find them. Because they would be coming soon, right? Another problem was arising, however. The boys were getting hungry. There was still the unopened can of beans, which would have contained a decent amount of hydrating liquid in which the beans were soaking. For some reason, David and Raffi decided to forego opening their can of beans and opted for a more industrious approach. Rattlesnake Canyon was lined with a multitude of prickly pear cactus, and their little bulbs of succulent fruit were available in abundance. Apparently, David had done a little bit of homework and knew that these cactus fruits were edible. The boys cut themselves a taster and found the fruits tasty and packed with hydrating juices. It seemed they may find their way through this predicament after all. But as the afternoon began to slide away into evening, the confidence they had built with their harvesting of water and food began to slide away as well. It seemed no one would be coming to rescue them that day, and they were no closer to finding the trail than they had been that morning. Raffi set up camp. It seemed they would be doing another night in Rattlesnake Canyon. Laying on their camping pads, moods darkened along with the sky. But as the stars began to shine, there also shone a small light of hope in the deepening darkness. On a hill that rose over the lip of the canyon, for just a brief moment, the boys saw headlights shining in the darkness. A road. There was a road on that hill, and they could see it from their camp. If they hiked over to that hill, they would certainly be able to find the road and get out of there, right? Once again, on the upswing of the emotional roller coaster, they were able to sleep soundly, knowing that in the morning they would be hiking out to that road and seeing the last of Rattlesnake Canyon. Right?
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah. Before starting the hopeful exodus the next morning, Raffi used his journal to leave a note at the campsite, where they would leave most of the gear. Smart on that. Here is Jason Kirsten's account of the note in his book, Journal of the Dead. I feel like I'm setting them up for failure whenever I read that title. You want to read this one for us, Moz, please?
Help, help. We filled out a backcountry card on Wednesday afternoon evening and headed down. Camped Wednesday, started back on Thursday morning, but couldn't find the entrance to the trail leading to the car. Looked all day Thursday, slept here. Thursday night and saw headlights along mountain number 3 around midnight. We're headed for that peak. See map on previous page. We've got minimum water and have been eating cactus fruit. We need help. If and when we reach the car, we will go to the visitor center, then attempt to come back for our gear carefully. On the facing page, Kodakun drew a rough map of the 3 peaks, numbering each one, and noted their time of departure, 7:30 a.m. in the margin. They left the journal lying in front of the tent, opened to the note, and began hiking in the direction they had seen. the headlights. It was now Friday, August 6th, the day they were supposed to arrive in California.
Thank you, Moz. But I'm afraid all of Raffi's work was for naught. Long story short, the headlights were apparently hoodoos. The boys spent too much time in the heat and sun hiking around the hillsides without finding any egress from the wilds of the Chihuahua. They suffered a physically and emotionally harrowing search for escape that drained the last reserves of hope from their minds. Eventually, they were once again trapped in what little shade they could find to hide from the scorching afternoon sun. They returned to their undiscovered note in far worse shape than when it was written. They were sunburned, dehydrated, out of water again, and to make things even worse, if that was even possible, David was in really bad shape. His legs were all but useless by the time camp was back in view. Raffi had to half-drag David for the last bit to get him back to the tent. But yet again, just as all hope was most assuredly lost, they spied another glimmer in the distance. As Raffi settled David's stiff-legged form into the camp, he noticed a cairn on the side of the wash. A cairn they hadn't noticed before. This had to be the trail they'd been looking for. It had to be. How could it not be? So what do?
Took the trail.
In their current state, and after the day they had just suffered, as well as the waning sunlight, they decided it would be best to rest for the night and inspect the cairn and hopefully the trail it was marking in the light of the morning. It was another night in Rattlesnake Canyon, without food and without water. The next morning, they were able to locate the cairn again and attempted to reignite some kind of hope within themselves. Standing next to the cairn, they scanned the terrain for the next cairn, for one cairn does not a trail make. If you cannot spy the next marker, the cairn you are at is no more than just a pile of rocks. With quickly fading vigor, they scanned and scanned the rocky and sandy terrain. Back east where they were from, the trails were all well-trod, easily definable tracks of bare dirt along the forest floor. Here in the desert land, that for the inexperienced may as well be the moon or Mars, they could not find the form of a cairn amongst the endless brown of sand and rock. After staring into the sun-bleached desertscape for what little time he could stand, David announced he was returning to camp. Raffi said he was going to keep looking. This deal didn't last long, however. David was soon calling out for Raffi, afraid of Raffi becoming lost and leaving David alone in this nightmare. David was beginning to unravel, and Raffi was hanging on by a thread. It just got worse from there. An attempt at a signal fire simply caused the canyon around them to fill with smoke, never reaching over the rim of Rattlesnake. They started building a rock SOS, but there were no search planes to be signaled. Scrambling for some idea that would save them from this place sapped the rest of their little remaining reserves. That night, Saturday night, their fourth night in Rattlesnake Canyon, all hope was finally lost. Here is an excerpt from an entry David wrote in Raffi's journal that night, addressed to his then-girlfriend Sonnet. I do not know what to do right now, but I am in utter agony and I know you would understand. I love you so much. I have barely eaten and drank since Wednesday evening. Nobody is coming to help. I love you. Tell Dan if I find a heavenly monkey I will forward one along. We had forever, but now all we have is eternity. Who knows, maybe I'll get kicked out for disorderly conduct and be able to pay you a visit. You will always be in my heart, and you will always have an angel standing by. Eternally yours, David Andrew. P.S. I'm trying so hard to be strong right now. It's not working. You can see the distressful mind state David was getting into. His state had worsened. The muscle stiffness had returned, and it was joined by vomiting and diarrhea, which is about the last thing you want when you're already dehydrated and lost in the desert. David wrote a similar entry addressed to his family. Raffi followed with an entry confirming David's description of their plight, and saying his own goodbyes. The two friends lay in the dark desert night, cursing the rangers that had not come, cursing the water they did not bring, cursing the Gatorade that sat mocking them in the back seat of the car they could not find. They cursed the world and their own existence. It was decided that they could not take any more. The majestic road they had so longed to travel ended here, in the worst of places, in the worst of ways, but in the end, in the final moments at least, it would be on their own terms. The plan was made. Each would take their knives and slice the other's wrists. That way they weren't committing what their faith would consider the sin of ending your own life. They would save each other's souls while freeing them from this hell on earth. But such plans are easier made than executed. Either their knives were too dull or their nerves were too weak, but all either managed to do was scratch the other's skin along the wrists. No one knows the truth of this except the two that were there, but for whatever reason, their pact was not seen through. David's condition continued to deteriorate, however, and as the true dark of night settled on them once again, David was screaming for mercy and begging for release. Raffi lay in the dark, listening to David's cries, and the night seemed to fade off into eternity. The next morning, as the sun once again began to shine down into Rattlesnake Canyon, Raffi was roused from a half-conscious stupor by a most unexpected sound, the sound of footsteps. After all this time, the Rangers had come. They had actually come. Saviors had arrived for the wayward boys in Rattlesnake Canyon. But there was one very serious problem with the scene when the Ranger found their camp. Here is the final entry Raffi Kodikian ever made in his travel journal. I killed and buried my best friend today. David had been in pain all night. At around 5 or 6, he turned to me and begged that I put my knife through his chest. I did, and a second time when he wouldn't die. He still breathed and spoke, so I told him I was going to cover his face. He said okay. He struggled, but died. I buried him with love. God and his family and mine, please forgive me. Raffi Kodikian. It was only a handful of hours after writing this passage that Raffi heard the footsteps of the approaching Rangers. Ooh, this is why I don't like doing true crime stuff here, Moz.
Dang.
David's body was carefully exhumed. Raffi was in and out of the hospital in a few hours, a remarkably short period of time for someone who was supposed to be dying of dehydration, and quickly arrested for the murder of David Coughlin. What ensued is one of the most dramatic and unprecedented court cases in New Mexico history, and maybe the country as a whole. It was the only case on record concerning mercy killings. Even with all the history of people dying in the deserts of the Southwest, never had there been a case of mercy killing brought into any court. Raffi Kodikian had made the darkest sort of history. Of course, during the trial process, all kinds of theories were created to explain what had really happened with Raffi and David in Rattlesnake Canyon. Some wondered if Raffi had been jealous of David and Kirsten running off to California together and all. Was there more to that trip that met the eye? Was there a star-crossed lovers thing going on? I don't buy into that myself, but some added to this with the theory that Raffi had written all of those journal entries and had been setting up David's murderous end since the beginning. Raffi's amazingly swift recovery after rescue didn't play well in his favor either. If he had been on the edge of death from dehydration and exposure, it would have taken him days of recovery in the hospital. Medically, there is no way he was anywhere near as bad off as David in the end, apparently. All kinds of fingers got pointed at Raffi, but there was no actual good reason presented at the trial to think Raffi's intentions were overtly malicious or premeditated. Jason Kirsten's book, Journal of the Dead, goes deep into the details of the trial. If you're interested, give it a read. It's actually a really good book. But this is running a bit long, so for our purposes, there are 2 things that came up at the trial that I think we all need to be aware of at this point. One is that David pulled a bit of an into the wild on himself, so to speak. Most people at this point are familiar with John Krakauer's book Into the Wild, the subsequent movie, directed by Sean Penn, soundtrack by Eddie Vedder, great album, by the way. In that story, the guy goes into the wild and eats what he thinks is an edible plant, which technically it is, but the plant is only edible at proper ripeness and with proper preparation. The fruits of the prickly pear cactus, which the boys were living on in the canyon for 3 days, are a similar sort of plant in that way. When they are fully ripened and mature, they are a great food source in a survival situation. They also make really good vodka, beer, probably whatever kind of alcohol you'd like to make from it. It's got a very unique sort of flavor.
Prickly pear vodka, good stuff.
But if you eat one that is unripened and immature, it can make you very violently ill. So much so that you may spend a little time wishing for death because of the excruciating symptoms it causes. Symptoms very much like Raffi reported David to be suffering that final night in Rattlesnake Canyon. Here's the thing, though. As bad as the symptoms may be, eating these unripe prickly pear is not fatal. It's basically a nasty case of food poisoning that will pass in a day or so. The other bit of wisdom from a man who testified as an expert at the trial. This was not your typical expert witness, however. He was an expert on dehydration in the desert, and his name was Peter Bigfoot. Can I get some mad cujos for Mr. Peter Bigfoot, please? Down boy! Thank you, Moz. This guy is as hardcore a desert rat as you'll ever see in this world. Mad respect, Mr. Bigfoot. May your stride ever be to the way of water. Craig Childs knows what I'm talking about on that one. Now all you do too. I will give you the honor, Moz, of reciting some of Mr. Peter Bigfoot's testimony. Here is his response to the lawyer's question. Have you had any personal experience with dehydration?
I had a lot of personal experience with dehydration. I think the most noteworthy was back in 1976. I walked 85 miles across the Sonora Desert without any food or water. It was in the summertime, and daytime temperatures were up to 130 degrees in the sun. My first day out, I didn't have anything to drink for the whole day. By about noon, my mouth was so dry that it would be about as dry as my clothes are now. And by the end of the day, when I finally got to the water hole that I was looking for, and I was traveling by map and compass at this time, I was in pretty serious condition for water, and the water hole that I was looking for had a decomposing dead cow in it. I drank probably about 5 gallons of that water, perhaps to give you an idea how desperate people get for water to drink next to a decomposing dead cow, but that was the only moisture around. As I'm in my normal state of being, well fed and with plenty of water, I have an awareness around me, and I think most people do, but maybe a mile or so of view, just clear thought about what's around us and where we fit in. And that kept coming in on me to where I got seriously dehydrated. I sat down to rest, and when I would stand up, I'd just fall down and wake up on the ground. At that time, dehydration was so bad that my awareness was only right here, in the suffering of my body. I couldn't think in terms of what's a mile away or more, or what's 100 yards, or even 10 feet. All I could think of was what was right here, in the suffering of my body.
Thank you, Moz. You just reported on MLT's first official Bigfoot sighting.
Nice. Well, Bone saw Bigfoot in Death Valley. I don't know if we covered that.
Right. Did he?
Yeah.
So we have to have Bone on again?
Yeah, maybe.
Wow. I thought we used all. That guy's got more stories, man.
That's his only cryptid.
But then again, he's gone down every road you can find on the map.
Yeah.
But anywho, so the boys were so close to the trail that meant, because when the Rangers came down into the canyon from the trail the boys were looking for, like they almost immediately saw their final camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were right there.
Yeah.
So they were so close to the trail that many wondered how they could have possibly missed it with days of searching. Mm-hmm. Peter Bigfoot gave us a real clear explanation of why that may have been. Just
you start to lose it.
Your brain stops working without, like,
Nutrients and water, yeah.
When you get a dehydration headache, the pain is coming from the fact that your brain is literally shrinking.
Yeah.
And your cerebral membrane is pulling on the other stuff it's connected to on the outside of it. And that's what's causing the pain.
Good times.
Like, your brain literally stops working when you get dehydrated.
And you get hangry.
Yeah. Yeah. In the hunger, I mean, you know, we try to drop in a joke here, and there's unfunny as this subject today might be. But yeah, hunger too. Like, when you start starving, when your body starts starving, it's a very similar thing. It's like you can't think right. You can't move right. Mm-hmm. Everyone in the courtroom felt for Raffi by the end of the trial. No one doubted this to be a mercy killing for which Raffi was endlessly remorseful. But in a courtroom, the law is the law. And the law said that a mercy killing is still murder. So Raffi was convicted. The minimum sentence was 15 years, but the judge, in his mercy, suspended all but 2 years of it. So Raffi would serve 24 months in prison for murdering his best friend. In the end, I pass no judgment on these boys, and the death of David Coughlin is a true tragedy that I'm sure will haunt Raffi Kodikian for the rest of his days. But we are who we are, and we do what we do.
Yep.
And this is just something that happened. The real thing is that some people think that Raffi Kodikian is the monster in this story, but he was not. That's not at all my intention here. He was just a human that made a series of bad decisions, many from inexperience and a youthful sense of imperviousness that all us humans are guilty of at some time or another in our life. Just most of us are lucky enough not to do it in a situation that can turn deadly so easily.
Yeah.
There are two monsters in this tale, as far as I can see. The desert and what we turn into when the desert gets into us. Yeah. As I said earlier in the saga, the desert, no matter what desert you may be speaking of, wants to kill you and absorb your resources. It is very Dune. Everything wants your water. And we see in action, through the boys' experience in Rattlesnake Canyon and Peter Bigfoot's offered wisdom, that the desert, long before killing us, can drain us of our sense, turn us into a sort of zombie that just wanders through the enemy terrain until it succumbs to the thirsty lure of the elements. The desert is an entity that demands respect. If you enter it without that proper respect, it will show you how much of a monster it can be. That is where this monstrous saga of death in the desert ends, but not before we go over some desert survival tips. This is a very long side trail. I almost skipped this part, but I was like, how can I do all this and not put in survival tips at the end?
We need to.
And this is from an East Coast, Northeast boy who moved out to the Southwest and has spent a lot of time in the desert. Mm-hmm. A lot of it in places where people don't really go. Mm-hmm. Could have gotten lost. Have spent a little extra time out there. Things like that. Okay, I got a little bullet point thing here for you. Number 1, when it comes to sustenance, bring more than you need. As far as water goes, bring that gallon a day per person suggested, but plan on being out there 3 times longer than you actually plan on being out there. That means if you plan on being out there for the afternoon, bring a whole day's worth. If you plan on being out there a whole day, bring 3 days worth. And always bring extra food as well. High-calorie stuff like candy, granola, energy bars are great for giving you energy without taking up too much space or weight. And always use what you have before foraging, unless you really know what you're doing. If the boys had utilized the beans, which were never opened, by the way, instead of collecting the cactus and eating the cactus, things may have come to a far different conclusion. When it comes to stuff, bring only what you need. The boys in this story went into the desert with 3 pints of water and 3 fry pans, plates, Tupperware containers, a bunch of other stuff that they had no real use for in the canyon. When you're going into the wilds, bring everything you need, but little if anything else. If you're really going out in the wild, the biggest thing to remember is a compass and a map that you know how to use. The compass, I very quickly glanced over it, but they didn't bring a compass. That could have made all the difference if they had just that, and knew how to use it. In the case of a place like Rattlesnake Canyon, bring some of your own obvious trail markers that you can recollect on the way back out. Bright colored ribbons, like pink and purple, that will stand out in the palette of the desert landscape. Leave a length of ribbon blowing in the breeze on each trail marker you pass, making sure the trail is visible on the way back. See
nice.
that? Yeah.
Nice. And
Just
if you're
make
making
sure,
hot dogs, fry them. Don't drink the don't boil them.
Very good call. If you're cooking food, don't use water to cook your food. You bring a fry pan and you cook it on the fire, or you just cook it over the open fire, whatever you want to do. I'll actually bring just the grill, like the actual, like from a little Smoky Joe grill, the thing that you put the food on, just that little grill part
over an open fire,
and put it over coals on the fire. Like it's the easiest thing to carry. It's no weight, very little space. You can hang it on the outside of your pack if it's dirty, kind of thing. Or back to the trail marking, adapt to the situation. If Raffi had actually purchased the proper amount of water in the form of those pint bottles, they would have had 16 pint bottles from the ranger station. They could have left water bottles as their own cairns along the trail.
Yeah.
Like a trail of breadcrumbs, but in this case, water, using what they needed to mark the way while carrying the rest to keep on hand. This can lighten your load on the way in and make sure you have enough water for the way out.
Yep.
Leave yourself water stations. That's actually something that, in the book I keep bringing up in this series, The Secret Knowledge of Water by Craig Childs, it's part of what those guys do, who actually, Peter Bigfoot, I'm sure, did this as well. The guys that walk around the desert looking for new water holes, they will be at one rocky place that has some water, and they'll see the next rocky place off in the distance that they're going to go check, and they will bring some water stuff that along the way, when they find, oh, look, this is a little kind of natural marker in the landscape between these two places, I'm going to stash half my water right here. And they'll just leave caches of water in between all these water places they find to make sure that they can find water, because the way to get across the desert is to always be looking for water, right?
Yep.
This is the stuff we learn. So those are the real lessons to take from this tragic tale. But the real thing is, and we said it before, know before you go. And when the guys who know say bring X amount of water, make sure to bring at least that much water.
Right.
Because they know what they're talking about. When you go into places like that, listen to the advice. That's the biggest thing you can do.
I also wouldn't, if you're inexperienced, go anywhere near the desert in the summer months.
And that's true too. When it's getting up over 100, just don't even go out there.
Yeah.
Go in the wintertime when it's, much cooler and
that's when we
easier
do it.
for your body to deal with it.
That's when we do it, right?
Right.
Most of the time it's February. And
yeah, that's why I live in Flagstaff, but I spend January and February down in the desert.
Yeah.
It's pretty much my role for the most part.
That's how you roll.
But that's my short list of advice. If you want more, email us, monsterloretour@gmail.com, if you have questions about maybe making some trips out to the Southwest. I've worked as a professional tour guide in northern Arizona, and happy to let any of our fans know about itineraries, help you out planning your trip a little bit if need. monsterloretour@gmail.com. Just put like tour advice or vacation advice or something in the subject line, and I'll totally get back to you on that.
Cool.
I had some really cool tours planned. I have no problem sharing them with our fans. And be safe. But anywho, anything to add or subvert before we go, Moz?
No, that was as horrible as I thought it would end.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
I didn't really like reading that part.
Yep.
But I feel like it's a murder thing, but it's a different kind of monster than you would normally get, even in the true crime genre.
Yeah.
And there are important lessons to learn. It's the kind of lesson that's best learned through someone else's story than doing it yourself.
Correct.
So I'm just hoping we help some people out. And now it's like, once it's less scary too. So like, don't be afraid of the desert. Just know that you have to respect it and prepare yourself properly.
Yeah.
Because if you prepare yourself properly, there's no worries.
Because as Seth MacFarlane said, there's a million ways the desert will kill you.
Yeah. Last time I went out to the secret lava tubes, as I call it, both people I went with, we were very early on the hike back out, because you got to hike in a couple miles and do the cave and then hike back out. We're leaving the cave and both the people I was with were out of water. And I was like, oh, you guys need some water? Here you go. Let me see your bottle. Fill it up. Oh, here you go. Let me see your bottle. Fill it up. And we're more than halfway through our excursion. I still have more water than I would have needed for myself on hand.
Right.
That's how you go into it.
No.
You know what I mean?
If the owl tells you not to go down that canyon, don't go down that canyon.
Yeah, and that too. No, listen to the universe when it talks to you, man. But anywho, that wraps it up for this one. Hopefully those who are into the darkness enjoyed this little piece of darkness that came in the form of a 4-act Shakespearean play. It was very Shakespearean, actually, in the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
And next week, after the compilation that culminates here, I will be getting back to my weird spacey stuff with my panspermia saga. So we're going to shift gears hard again and get back into some more theoretical things and some more spacey things and more some micro things.
Yeah.
It's gonna get
monstrous microcosm.
Yeah, we're gonna start getting into that. There's actually a number of series me and Maz will do between us to feed into that genre. But it's gonna start with panspermia. And yeah, let's get out of here real quick before we do go. Please hit those happy little fun buttons on whatever platform you're on, like, subscribe, share, follow. Hit that auto download button. That's the biggest thing. And if you want to help out a little bit monetarily, we do have just $1 a month at our Patreon at patreon.com/monsterlore. You get early access to all these episodes and corresponding side trails that come out right along with the episodes. So you don't have to wait for these things to come out in the compilations. And we're out of here. Until the next time, stay groovy, baby. Monster Lore Tour Podcast. Good job. Good job.